Holy cow.
Holy
Yeah.
cow. That's amazing. Ninth season. Now, a season is a year.
Correct.
So, yeah, because some places are like, they'll put 2 seasons in 1 year. So, but not us.
Not us, no.
This is 9 years.
9 years.
Wow. I think you had hair when we started.
I may have.
9 years ago.
I have less now.
If any.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
welcome, folks. We're going to do our one of our things is a thought to ponder. And this is a great one to think about for the beginning of this year. This is our first show of 2026. The solution for a lot of the world's problems may be to turn around and take a forward step.
Okay.
The solution for a lot of the world's problems may be to turn around and take a forward step, which means take a step back and look around, think about what's going on. I thought that was a good one for this year.
It is. I didn't think we were going to get political, but yeah, that's a good one.
I wasn't thinking politics, Mark.
Maybe you should. I'll tell you what.
Oh, my.
Yeah. So you have any New Year's resolutions?
I don't make New Year's resolutions.
Oh, is that right?
No.
Okay.
I try to just kind of not just wing it or go with the flow. I just try to, get a little bit sharper,
That's good.
in what I do. And
last year I did a chair yoga, lasted about 30 days.
How did the chair last?
It broke, but no. But this year I'm going back after it again, just a little more aggressive.
Okay.
As we get older, we need to exercise.
I've seen the chair yoga stuff.
Yeah.
Was also thinking about the other about Tai Chi.
Tai Chi. There you go.
I'm thinking about that.
Okay.
But right now I'm just thinking about it.
You're just thinking.
Right.
I know. You have to put it into action.
That's correct.
That's where you get the benefit.
That's correct. Well, we've put into action a great show today. Gordon Meyer is the creator, executive producer, partner, editor-in-chief of Hollywood's Master Storytellers, and he's a classmate of Mark and myself. And Gordon Meyer, welcome to St. Louis in Tune.
My pleasure.
All right. I've got gazillion questions here, Gordon. And Gordon was in the band. He was a trumpet player, by the way.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so we're bandmates also.
Okay, that explains a lot.
So what is Hollywood Master Storytellers?
Hollywood Master Storytellers was a series that I created, produced, and hosted for over 7 years, where we ran a mix of recent and classic movies at a theater in the heart of Hollywood, ArcLight Hollywood on Sunset and Vine, right next to the Cinerama Dome. And I would then interview key members of the creative team, usually a mix of writers, directors, and producers, but sometimes stars, sometimes people like Oscar-winning visual effects artist Stan Winston, sometimes composers, editors. We had quite the gamut, and we had a lot of fun during our initial 7-year run.
And are you still doing that, Gordon?
We're looking at doing a reboot of it, but right now we are just dealing with our YouTube channel and our website, which I've sadly neglected for way too long.
Well, I think you kind of shut down a little bit because of COVID, right? The pandemic?
We did. We were, again, when we were in active production, of course, this was long before COVID hit when we ended our initial run. But, we were in a movie theater. It was actually a 14-screen complex where the screen size was between 200 and 400 seats.
Wow. That's a big one.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I think we lost him.
Gordon, you still there?
No, I think we lost him. We'll take a break and we'll be right back and connect. I think we'll be able to reconnect with him.
Sounds
right?
great.
Okay. We'll be right back.
As strange as it may sound, at Better Rate Mortgage, we love talking to people about mortgages. Everyone in St. Louis promises a better mortgage rate. But what you really need to turn that perfect house into your dream home is a better mortgage. At Better Rate Mortgage, we open the door to so much more. So where are you in the home buying process? Researching? Maybe wondering how much you can afford? house hunting. Get a pre-approval from Better Rate Mortgage. Ready to buy. Our team is ready to make your mortgage process fast and easy. Whether you're purchasing your first home or taking cash out to make your dream home even dreamier, our door is open. Come on in and get started today. We'll show you how. Call Sean directly at 314-375-3293 or online at betterratemortgage.com. Remember, at Better Rate Mortgage, a better rate is just the beginning. betterratemortgage.com. NMLS ID 40135, an equal housing lender.
So, Gordon, you kind of stopped during COVID and just kind of rebooting things and just reorganizing things.
We're working on a number of different ways of reviving the brand. One of the most exciting things, as you know, was our new relationship with the Criterion Collection. For your listeners who aren't familiar with that brand, for over 40 years, the Criterion Collection pioneered the concept of collector's editions of great movies. They were one of the first companies to do letterboxed films. Are you familiar with what
I'm not familiar with that. No,
neither am I.
Okay, so up until the widescreen era of TVs, when movies were transferred to videos, they changed the aspect ratio. In other words, the ratio of an image's height to width, so that it fit more or less the square aspect ratio of old school TVs. In film terms, it was 1.33 to 1. In other words, 1.33 times as wide as it is high. That was the aspect ratio that movies used up until the widescreen era began in the 50s, and what TVs had been, up until like 25, 30 years ago. So they would do what was called a pan and scan, where they would use an optical printer to shift around the image so that it just fit that square image, and it basically cut off the sides of the picture. Criterion did what's called letterboxing, where they put a black bar at the top and bottom of the image so that you got the entire width of the original image from the film. And they were one of the first companies that focused on doing that. So you're basically seeing the movie the way the filmmakers intended to be seen. They were also one of the first companies to offer commentary tracks on movies and bonus content. And now everybody's doing it, but Criterion was the first one to actually do that. And they're still market leaders, and it's a very prestigious label. Well, last year, they approached me because one of the shows that we did in 2005 was the 20th anniversary of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, where I had the pleasure of interviewing the late Paul Rubens in front of a live studio audience of 400 fans. And we talked about a little bit of everything in that, but especially the development of the Pee-wee character. And a couple of years ago, I saw in the trades that there was a company developing a documentary series for HBO about Paul Rubens. And I contacted the producers and said, hey, I've got this interview with Paul. Would you be interested in licensing that to include in your documentary series? And Paul was very hands-on with that documentary because he was extremely protective of his Pee-wee character. So he had to approve anything and everything that was related to Pee-wee. And I sent them, I gave them permission to borrow our master tape so that they could review the content and decide whether or not they wanted to include it in their documentary. Well, they never did license it, but and in the middle of the production of this series, which is available on HBO right now, it's like a 2 or 3 part series about Paul. Paul sadly passed away, but apparently his estate maintained the copies of our content that we provided to the producers. And when the disc producer at Criterion was working with them on the special 40th anniversary restoration of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. The representative of Paul's estate said, "Hey, there's this interview that Paul did in 2005 that you guys really should look at and contact the guy who produced it and see if you can license it from him." And so I got a call from the disc producer from the Criterion Collection, and we worked everything out, and they ended up using 37 of the 51 minutes of my interview with Paul.
Wow.
And it's in the bonus content section of the Criterion Collection's 40th anniversary restoration of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which came out on December 16th of last year.
That's fantastic.
It is. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's congratulations, Gordon.
Yeah, good for you.
And I was surprised. I didn't know this, that Tim Burton actually produced that or directed that film.
Oh, is that right? That one of my favorite movies as a young lad growing up was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Yeah.
I'm right on that, Gordon. Like, you're the expert on this film stuff. Is that correct? Tim Burton directed that? Gordon? Is that him or us? He must be in a bad zone or something. Yeah, tell him.
Oh, hi there. Okay, here we go again. This is why we record. Stand by one more second. Here we go. Okay.
Did you transfer him? You there, Gordon?
I'm here.
Okay, yeah, we were getting a little breaking up on the cell coverage there. So, okay.
Where would you like me to resume this story?
So I actually asked, I said, I think Tim Burton was the director of Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Is that correct? You're the film
industry. Correct. That was one of his, I think it was like his second or third feature. What Paul had said in our interview was, and Paul was an uncredited producer on the film as well as being the star and the co-writer. But he was instrumental in getting Tim Burton. He had just done Frankenweenie. I think that was his first feature. And they connected through mutual friends because Tim was really hot at the time after Frankenweenie. And again, that was one of Tim's very first features as a director.
I know Paul Rubens, he liked to keep his persona very, very private. And he kind of, he was really promoting the Pee Wee Herman character. What was he like in person when you were talking to him? I've seen that interview. Matter of fact, folks, we're going to post that interview that Gordon did with him. I'll give you, we'll share that link, and we'll also share the link of the Criterion Collection 40th anniversary with you on the podcast page, stlandtune.com. So what was he like in that interview, Gordon?
It could not have been nicer. And you got that sense from watching the interview yourself. He was charming. He was friendly. One of the things that we always did with our guests was, while the movie was running for the audience, we took them to dinner because the theater that we were running out of, ArcLight Hollywood, had an in-house restaurant. So we would take him to dinner at the restaurant in the theater while the movie was running. And, we had a very nice conversation. Paul was very fond of Cuban food and suggested a Cuban restaurant in Hollywood.
Wow.
As his go-to place to get those Cuban sandwiches that are so famous.
The Cubanos.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Did this all of a sudden just come out of the blue? You wanting to do this Hollywood Master Storytellers? You were like, wow, it'd be great to sit down with these directors and actors and screenplay writers and composers and talk to them before the movie. Where did this all come about?
The origins of the series were, I was involved in a networking organization for budding screenwriters, and I had ArcLight Hollywood was brand new at the time, and I had organized an event in their restaurant. It was a networking event for the organization I was part of. So I developed a relationship with ArcLight Management, and they were looking for, they wanted to start a film series where people could talk to screenwriters, where, screenwriters would come to talk about the movies that they had written. And, they said, hey, do you know anybody that can produce such a series? And I said, well, yes, me. And so I started a show with them called Meet the Writer. And again, we actually kicked off that show with Ray Bradbury.
Oh, wow.
Talking about his adaptation of Moby Dick for producer-director John Huston. And we kind of built from there. And as an aside, Ray was one of the biggest kids that I ever met. He just had this wonderful childlike passion and enthusiasm. And this was not the first time I'd interacted with Ray, by the way. When I was in film school, I produced a tribute to the Disney Studios. And Ray was one of our speakers because he and Walt were friends, close friends, and he was a consultant on the parks. And Ray had actually arranged for my team and I to get a tour of what was then called WED Enterprises, now Disney Imagineering, partly because that was his association with the studio, but also because one of our honorees was the late Mark Davis, who started out as an animator. Among the characters that he animated was Cruella de Vil in the original 101 Dalmatians. And Walt had shifted him over to Imagineering, where he was one of the key designers of attractions like the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean. So we, Ray had arranged for us to get the tour of Imagineering and to meet with Mark in his office. And, so there was a sign over the door in Mark's office that said, Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. What's...
And then, I helped myself to a chair near the door, and he said, oh, by the way, that's the chair Walt used to sit in when he came to visit me.
Oh, my gosh.
It's like, my ass is where Walt Disney's was. Wow.
Wow.
But anyway, so we started Meet the Writer with Ray Bradbury, and we had a fair amount of success. And then I ended my relationship with the writers organization, and because I had already developed a good relationship with ArcLight Management, I started Hollywood's Master Storytellers, where our guest roster expanded beyond writers to also include directors and producers, and very often actors, hyphenates, visual effects artists. And, during our initial 7-year run, we had some really great guests, including Oscar winners.
What are some of those guests that you really recall and you remember, and why do you remember those conversations you had with them?
Well, one of the things, we did a number of DVD launch events for the studios, which were primarily live local, and other publicity events for the studios. So, one of the highlights was the director's cut of Alexander with Oliver Stone. And Warner Brothers actually struck a 35 millimeter print for our screening.
Wow.
To talk about that. The most high profile event that we did was the 25th anniversary of the Blues Brothers, which we broadcast live from the Chinese theater to almost 100 screens around the country.
So who was in that interview group? Was Belushi in that, or Aykroyd, or?
Well, so here's who we had on stage with us. We had Tom Mount, who was the president of the studio when the movie was made. So he was like the uncredited executive producer. The late Steve Cropper from the Blues Brothers Band. The late Henry Gibson, who played the head of the Illinois Nazi Party. Now, I knew Henry, and you do also, from his years on Laugh-In.
Right.
And Henry was just such a nice man. And he and I later became Facebook friends. He was very, very nice. We had the godfather of soul himself, James Brown.
Wow.
Don't do that anymore.
and the film's director, John Landis. And we beamed in Dan Aykroyd from a studio in Toronto.
That's cool.
And they told some great stories. So for example, one of the legends that they worked with, in this movie was Cab Calloway, whose career dated back to the late 1920s, 1930s,
right?
When he was a star at the Cotton Club in Harlem. And Landis talked about working with him because he had just done, his trademark song was Minnie the Moocher. And, he had just done, God help us, a disco version of Minnie the Moocher that he wanted to use in the movie. And Aykroyd and Landis said, no. If we have Cab Calloway, we've got to do the classic Minnie the Moocher. So they go into the recording studio to pre-record it, and they do a take. And Calloway says to Landis, how was that? And Landis says, well, it was good, but no offense, you're Cab Calloway. I expected great.
What is that?
Calloway says, you didn't ask for great.
Oh.
Well, can we do it again and this time do it great? So they do another take. Calloway says, how is that? And Landis says, now that was great. He says, you have to ask for great.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And then Aykroyd told the story about the night that they shot the mall sequence. Now, for anyone who has not seen the movie The Blues Brothers, there's a sequence where Jake and Elwood Blues are driving their Bluesmobile car through the inside of a shopping mall, wreaking havoc. And they shot it in an actual mall that was slated for demolition. So it's 2 a.m, and they're, setting up for the next shot, and Belushi has disappeared. Where's Belushi?
Uh-oh.
They look around, they see a house about a quarter of a mile away with the lights still on. So Aykroyd and a crew member go to the house, they ring the bell. Guy answers the door. Aykroyd says, sorry to disturb you. We're shooting a movie down the street. One of our cast members has disappeared. We're wondering if you'd possibly seen him. Oh, you mean John Belushi?
Oh,
yeah,
no.
he raided my fridge. Now he's sacked out on my couch.
Oh,
Gosh. Those are the kinds of things people never know unless you do something like you've done with in the Hollywood Master Storytellers.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. That was the whole point, and that was one of the reasons we were able to attract so many really great artists, again, including Oscar winners, because, one of the traditional publicity strategies that studios have been using for years is a thing called a press junket, where they would fly in TV reporters from all over the country, put them up in a hotel, usually in the LA area, and they'd give it like 5 minutes or 6 minutes of FaceTime with a star so that they could get their 30-second sound bites for the 11 o'clock news. Well, the artists don't know for sure what questions they're going to be asked, but they know from experience what questions they're likely to be asked. And they have pretty much canned answers to fit into that 30-second sound bite. We gave our guests the space to really let down their hair and tell their stories. My whole MO as the host was to create the space and then let the guests shine and tell their stories. And as a result, we got great stories. We had great guests, and we had developed a really good reputation, which is why we were able to get people like Oliver Stone and and the late Sidney Sheldon, who, most people these days know Sheldon as a best-selling novelist. But before that, he created and produced I Dream of Jeannie and the Patty Duke Show, and wrote most of the episodes for that. And before that, he was an Oscar-winning screenwriter. If I remember correctly, he wrote Easter Parade and The Bachelor and the Bobby Stalker, The Bachelor and the Bobby Soccer, with a teenage Shirley Temple, and I think Cary Grant.
That's
so
crazy.
he was one of our guests. I mean, we had some really great guests over the years. And I know you're going to ask, all right, who's your favorite, right?
Yeah, who is your favorite?
I had that down on one of my questions. That's correct.
Really? And who's your worst?
I have that one down too, but I thought maybe I shouldn't ask that question.
I'm happy to say that all of our guests were good. Some were great. Others were just good, but I never had a bad experience with any of them. Well, there was one exception, but I'm not going to, out of respect for that particular artist because he's passed away, I'm not going to go into it. But that was really, his publicist was kind of a jackass. My two favorites, it was a toss-up between Drew Barrymore and George Clooney.
Really?
Now, we had
that's fascinating.
We had Drew Barrymore and her producing partner Nancy Juvonen to talk about 51st Dates, which was one of the first movies that her production company Flower Films made, and it was a co-production with Adam Sandler's company, and the second romantic comedy that she made with Adam. And she and Clooney were both really down to earth, articulate, funny, and a little bit self-deprecating. And, I don't remember the answer to this question, but she got a kick out of the question that I gave her. Did Adam improve as a kisser between 51st Dates and the other rom-com that she did? She got a kick out of that question. And then we had Clooney with Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, which was his directorial debut. That was based on the, quote, unauthorized autobiography of Chuck Barris.
Oh, I love that.
Who was the
big fan,
creator and producer of shows like The Gong Show and The Dating Game.
Yep.
And we ended up talking about a lot of things in addition to Confessions. And again, George was just really down to earth and a lot of fun to talk to. And we talked about, he kept ragging on himself for destroying the Batman franchise.
He did. I believe that. At least they recovered, but it was tough that then. Yeah.
And then he got serious and admitted that it was actually a really big career break for him because he was still making that transition from TV star to movie star.
Right.
I had a brush with greatness with George Clooney. I did. They did Up in the Air. Part of it was recorded actually right down the street from me at in a church. The church scene was in Maplewood, and it was on the corner of Sutton and Flora in Maplewood. And they made it look. It was in the middle of the summer, and they made it look like snow. They had all that blow-in snow stuff that they do. And he was there and he was doing his thing, but he came out and we had fans were everywhere watching the movie being made.
Of course.
And he took time to stop and talk to all the people that were standing out there.
Wow.
And there were other stars that were there that, kind of turned their nose up and went back and went to their work. I guess they were focused, whatever. But George,
the big ones were like that. When I was a senior in high school, between my junior and senior year, I had a summer job at the Munich Opera. I was working the concession stand. It paid squat, but it was fun and it was easy.
Right. And you are you are from St. Louis, by the way. You are from University City.
Yeah, I grew up in U City. So, one of the shows that they did that summer was the musical Irene with Debbie Reynolds, which was a revival of a 1920s era musical. And at the time, it was the hottest show on Broadway. And they actually shut the show down in New York and brought the entire cast to St. Louis for a week at the Muni.
How wonderful. Wow.
And, the Muni, of course, obviously being an outdoor theater, they're subject to weather.
Yeah.
And in the middle of one of the performances, it started to rain. Well, they had to stop the performance. They couldn't have the performers running around on a wet stage. It was a safety issue. And Debbie Reynolds, old school trooper that she was, said, these people paid to be entertained. I'm going to entertain them. And she proceeded to do songs from her old movies until the rain let up.
Wow.
I love it.
Cool.
That's great.
And then, after each performance, for anyone that was patient enough to hang out by the stage door, she was very gracious about signing autographs.
That's great. That's really wonderful.
I mean, that's old school trooper.
It is.
That's
I
correct.
admire people like that.
That's correct.
I know.
And then of course with Clooney, one of the things we talked about was working on "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," written and directed by the Coen brothers, and he loved working with the Coen brothers. And I had screwed up on my research. I was under the impression that he had done his own singing. So I asked him about it. And he said, no, you see, I have this aunt who's a famous singer. His aunt was the late Rosemary Clooney.
Oh, God.
Huge musical star.
Right.
And recording star. She was Bing Crosby's romantic interest in White Christmas.
Right.
So I have this aunt who's a famous singer, and so T-Bone Burnett, the music coordinator on Oh Brother, assumed that I could sing, and I assumed that I could sing. So he says, I rehearsed the song "Man of Constant Sorrow." We go into the recording studio and record a take. I said, "That was all right, was it?" He says, "Nobody in the control room would look him in the eye." And they played it back for him. He said, "All right, get your guy." And then now this is, again, an example of what a classy guy Clooney is. Tim Blake Nelson, who co-starred with him in the movie and made a lot less than Clooney did as an actor, ultimately made more money than Clooney did because he did do his own singing. And the soundtrack album went platinum.
Wow.
And Clooney was genuinely happy for him about that. And he said, that taught me, I'm going to go get singing lessons. We're going to do a musical remake of Revenge of the Killer Tomatoes.
I love it.
Which was this cheesy, low-budget science fiction movie he made very early in his career.
Gordon, we're going to take a quick break here and want to come back and talk with you about your early entertainment industry and the shoes and the relationship there. So we'll be right back. This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston of St. Louis in Tune. Don't go away.
As strange as it may sound, at Better Rate Mortgage, we love talking to people about mortgages. Everyone in St. Louis promises a better mortgage rate, but what you really need to turn that perfect house into your dream home is a better mortgage. At Better Rate Mortgage, we open the door to so much more. So where are you in the home buying process? Researching? Maybe wondering how much you can afford? House hunting? Get a pre-approval from Better Rate Mortgage. Ready to buy? Our team is ready to make your mortgage process fast and easy. Whether you're purchasing your first home or taking cash out to make your dream home even dreamier, our door is open. Come on in and get started today. We'll show you how. Call Sean directly at 314-375-3293 or online at betterratemortgage.com. Remember, at Better Rate Mortgage, a better rate is just the beginning. betterratemortgage.com. NMLS ID 401335, an equal housing lender.
Welcome back to St. Louis in Tune. This is Arnold Stricker with Mark Langston. We're talking to Gordon Meyer, creator, executive producer, partner editor-in-chief of Hollywood's Master Storytellers. And Gordon, at the front end of the show, I talked about that you began in the industry, the entertainment industry, when you were 12, and you were hired to provide the voice of whom?
Buster Brown.
Oh,
Brown Shoe Company.
Oh, no.
Brown Shoe Company.
That was in St. Louis. Was that in Clayton? Was that the Brown Shoe Company?
I believe their corporate headquarters were in Clayton.
Yes.
And there was a company called Condor Films. At the time, I was in an acting school at the age of 12 called Junior Theater. And they needed a kid to provide the voice of Buster Brown for an animated TV commercial that I never even saw. But based on the recommendation of the woman who ran that school, I got the gig, got paid a whole $25 with no residuals.
Oh,
that's a lot of money back then.
And then, you know, in the late 1960s, that was a lot of money for a 12-year-old.
That's right.
Yeah.
You know, and I spent the day in the recording studio saying over and over again, "That's my dog Tig. He lives in a shoe. I'm Buster Brown. Look for me in there too."
I was going to ask you if you remember the lines.
I don't remember the rest of the copy, but I remember that because that was really the tagline.
And then in high school, you had your first celebrity interview with a great actor,
Hal Holbrook. Yeah, I was a huge fan of his one-man show, Mark Twain Tonight.
Right.
And in fact, as an actor, as a teenager, I actually did my own 45-minute version of that show and performed a lot of school assemblies around town.
Really?
I don't know if you remember that or not.
I don't remember that.
But I was the arts and review editor for the school newspaper at U City High.
I remember that.
And
the Tom Tom.
Holbrook was it was called the Tom Tom now. I forget what it's called now because it's no longer politically correct to use Native American terms like that.
Right, the mascot went from the Indians to the Lions.
Yeah, right. So Holbrook was coming to town to do Mark Twain Tonight live at Kiel Auditorium. And we had career day, as so many schools do. And the entertainment editor for the St. Louis Globe Democrat was one of the guests. And I went to meet with him, and I, mentioned that, Holbrook was coming, and I'd love to review the show and interview him. But I'm just a high school kid. That can't happen. He said, I don't see why not. And he had me give him a call at his office the next day. He contacted the local promoter, who could not have been nicer. The promoter said, well, I can definitely give you a couple of comps for the show. No problem. As far as interviewing him, he's going to be in town a day or two before the show. I'll ask him when he's in town. Now, and then he called, the day before the show, Mr. Holbrook will see you after the performance. Now, I would have gone to his hotel. I would have happily skipped school with the blessing of my teachers and my parents. But at Holbrook's suggestion or request, I interviewed him in his dressing room after the show.
Wow.
And spent about 45 minutes with him. Fortunately, I had the foresight to bring a tape recorder with me.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that I could record the whole thing, all 45 minutes, and then transcribed parts of the interview for my article in the Tom Tom. And then a couple of years later, I was an undergrad at the University of Georgia, and he was coming to do Twain in Atlanta at the fabulous Fox Theater. And I contacted the promoter. I contacted the editor of the Red and Black, which was the school paper at the University of Georgia. By the way, the University of Georgia has one of the most prestigious journalism schools in the country. They're the ones that issue the Peabody Awards.
Huh.
And so I contacted the editor. I said, I have this interview with Hal Holbrook. Would you be interested? Oh, hell yes.
Of course they would.
And I contacted the local promoter. I said, I can get this article placed in the University of Georgia Red and Black. Is that worth a couple of comps to you? And like, oh, yeah, like I was available for cheap. He said, oh, hell yeah. Oh, and by the way, the day before the show, Mr. Holbrook will be doing a press conference for members of college and high school newspapers. Would you like to come to that? And, that was the day that my article came out. So I brought copies of it so I could give it to him. And he looked at me like, you look familiar. Do I know you?
Wow.
And I reminded, and, I've seen the show live, at least 10 times, I think, since then over the years. Every time he came to Southern California, go to see it. And I discovered through research online that he had this practice that after each performance, anybody who wanted to meet him could do so as long as you knew to ask.
What a great guy.
Oh, yeah. So he always had these informal receptions, after each performance. And, once I knew about that, obviously I had to go and sit in on those. And, every performance was different. He had so much material in his head, and he was constantly tweaking and adding new material over the years. So no two performances had the same mix of material.
That really speaks to someone who understands their craft and their art, and is able to, accumulate the knowledge of trying to portray the character, and then chooses based upon the audience or the moment that they are feeling to portray what they need to convey.
Yeah, and he kept a log of what segments that he did at each performance.
Wow.
So he knew beforehand, before each performance, if he had been in that city before or what he had done before, but he would still decide on the fly what he would do based on audience reaction.
Right.
And, he continued to tour as Twain until he was in his early 90s.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Now, this is a stretch. Yeah. This is a stretch, Gordon. Do you still have that audio tape that you made of that interview with Hal Holbrook in high school?
If I do, it's buried somewhere in my storage, but sadly, I don't think I do. But I'll tell you another Twain story, because that's actually, I used to perform as Twain, and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts held regional auditions in St. Louis. Now, the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, again, very prestigious school for actors based in New York, and then up until recently, they had a branch here in Hollywood, and their alumni is a who's who of Hollywood and Broadway. And the New York branch especially, a lot of their alumni became very prominent on Broadway. And I scheduled an interview / audition when they were in town. And I remember the session was held in a large suite at the Chase Park Plaza Hotel, and there were only 3 of us in the room. It was myself, a reporter from the Post-Dispatch, and the executive director of the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. So the first part of the session was really more of an interview and an orientation, where he talked about how the school operated. They offered a 2-year Associate of Arts degree, and it was very competitive. They only allowed about a third of their first-year students to stay for the second year. And then it was time for the audition, and there were 3 monologues. One was a cold read from a monologue from the Glass Menagerie, which I learned later on. Tennessee Williams, the playwright who wrote Glass Menagerie and other classic Broadway dramas, was actually an alumnus of U City High.
That's correct.
Who?
And I did not know that at the time. So, I did a cold reading from that, and then I was supposed to have 2 prepared monologues, one humorous and one dramatic, and I threw them for a loop. Instead, I did 2 contrasting excerpts from The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. This 18-year-old kid as 70-year-old Mark Twain, 70-year-old Mark Twain as 15-year-old Huck, and 15-year-old Huck as all the other characters in the narrative.
Wow. It's crazy.
And now at the time, especially because of how competitive the school was, I felt like I didn't have the level of commitment necessary to make that session really, to make that viable.
Right.
And even then, at the time, I was really interested in going to film school with the idea of going to either UCLA or USC. UCLA, we were now referred to as that large state-supported institution across town, whose initials stand for "You Clowns Lost Again."
You clowns lost.
And of course, the Bruins refer to us as either the University of Spoiled Children or the University of Second Choice.
Does that fit? I think that fits.
Those are great acronyms.
Just kidding.
Not really, but the friendly crosstown rivalry. But anyway, so I decided not to pursue it. But that summer, I got a letter from the American Academy of Dramatic Arts saying, "Hey, are you still interested in our September session?"
What?
And I'm thinking to myself, they want me.
Oh.
And I wrote back and I explained why I decided to pass, but said, well, would I have been admitted? Well, we couldn't tell you for sure because you never completed the application process. Translation. we never got an application fee or a statement of financial responsibility.
Gotcha.
But then they wrote, but on the basis of your audition, yes, you would have been more than welcome.
There you go. That explains it.
Just had to show me the money.
That's right.
It was very flattering.
Or the lack of.
Or the lack of money, right.
That is great. That is great. Hey,
this seems like a calling for you.
Absolutely.
It really does. I mean, even since when you're 12 years old, it looks like you were headed for LA, headed for Hollywood. It's just amazing how your life has taken the course it's taken.
I've worn a lot of hats over the years, and I've had some really wonderful experiences. And, the irony, of course, I as a teenager, I played Twain at 70, and now I'm almost 70. I'll be 70 in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And I still remember some of the Twain material, and I'm toying with the idea of reinventing myself. And, I've got a lot of friends in the industry, obviously, and one of them is a very prestigious acting coach. Noah Wiley is one of his clients.
Oh, well, yeah.
Okay.
And so, I'm looking at possibly, going back into acting and maybe doing some voiceover work.
Doing school assemblies is Mark Twain.
Yeah,
that's a great thing for the history portion.
Yeah.
The history and the literary art portion.
And now I just found out that Richard Thomas, one of the stars of the Waltons, has licensed the right to do Mark Twain Tonight from the Holbrook estate, and he is now touring as Twain.
Oh,
wow.
I have no idea how his performance is, or if he does the same kind of thing that Holbrook did of, varying his performance and material from performance to performance.
We have all the scoops in Hollywood here.
That's right.
All the scoop that he made, right.
And reportedly he does a much shorter version. When Holbrook, all the times that I've seen Holbrook, the running time was a little over 2 hours plus intermission. He did it in 2 acts. Thomas apparently does just a straight 90 minutes without intermission. And, again, I have not really seen any footage of him as Twain. So, I don't know what his performance is like compared to Holbrook, but I think Holbrook is the gold standard as far as Mark Twain goes.
Yes. Gordon, what advice do you give to potential actors, producer, directors, writers who may be thinking about that as a career? What advice do you give to them?
Well, of course, depending on which craft that you're talking about, actors, well, first of all, with anybody, practice your craft. Actors act. Take lessons, work with an acting coach, do community theater, do student films, get footage of yourself, and build a reel and build a reputation and develop relationships with budding filmmakers. Here in LA, for example, you've got a number of prominent film schools. You've got USC, you've got UCLA, Cal Arts, just to name a few of the LA Film School, a lot of film schools. And, these student filmmakers, they need actors. And, you generally speaking, you will get paid minimally, if anything, to do these student films, but it's experience, it's footage, and you're developing a relationship with someone that could possibly open doors for you later on in your career as their careers develop.
I always think it's a good idea to do your craft, no matter what.
Right.
If that's what you want to do, you should just do it.
Right.
Just keep doing it. Do what you love.
And for writers, again, practice your craft, study screenplays. There are a lot of screenplays available online that you can download, in many cases for free. In fact, because we're in award season right now, a lot of the movies that are being promoted for Oscar nominations, the studios have put their screenplays online so that they can, basically to promote Best Original and Best Adapted Screenplay nominations.
It's interesting.
And you can download these screenplays. I mean, I've got probably over 100 screenplays, PDF files of over 100 screenplays on my computer that I've downloaded over the years. So study screenplays, see how they're written, see how they're crafted. You know, see how the writers describe what you see on the screen, and learn from that, and then enter contests.
Oh, there you go.
You know, there are places out there where you can pay to get coverage and feedback on your script, and feedback is always valuable. You know, having other people read what you've done. One of the things that I learned a tremendous amount from, many years ago, I took a writing class through UCLA Extension, which is UCLA Extension. Even though I'm a Trojan, UCLA Extension has great writing classes taught by working professionals. And I think some of them some of these classes may even be available online, so you don't have to be in LA to take them. But in this particular case, the teacher was a writer by the name of Lionel Chetwynd, who had written, among other movies, The Apprenticeship of Lenny Kravitz, which was one of Richard Dreyfuss's early starring roles, and the Hanoi Hilton, which was a Vietnam-themed thing. And one of his sessions, he had us bring in a 3-page scene, and he brought in actor friends of his to do a cold reading of these scenes so that we could hear how our dialogue sounded. And then we could get feedback from the actors as to what it felt like to actually say those words.
That's great advice.
And that was a really valuable experience.
Yeah.
And, you know, if I remember correctly, one of the actors he brought in, two of them were David Soul and James Coburn for that session, two friends of his. So it's like, I got some pretty good people, you know, reading my dialogue.
Starsky and Hutch and In Like Flint.
Right.
Exactly.
Wow. All wrapped up in one. Wow.
You know, so, you know, those are some of the kinds of things, you know, obviously, educational opportunities. If you're at a place that has, like, for example, a good drama school, if you're acting, or a good film school, you know, to help master your craft, because it is a craft.
Right.
And there's you know, it's not just raw talent. You know, there's skill sets that need to be developed.
Gordon, you're out there in Hollywood. What does the film industry look like these days? Doesn't seem like they're cranking out the movies like they used to. It just seems like there's a bit of a shift in how movies are being made. It's
tough right now. You know, again, I've got a lot of friends in the industry, including many of my classmates. And it's tough. Streaming has really affected production, so much production moving to other parts of the world. You know, Vancouver, Atlanta, other countries. So there's not as much production here in LA as there used to be. If you get on a TV series, because of streaming, seasons, instead of being 22 or 24 episodes, are down to like 8 to 12 episodes per season.
Notice that.
So, you know, getting a writing position on a series is harder. There's more competition, and there's not as much work available.
Is like an Amazon Prime, you know, they're doing like Bosch and Reacher and all those kind of things. They seem to be taking off quite a bit as a platform for entertainment.
Yeah, they are, and you know, again, it's a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, there's more and more content, but more and more of that content is being produced outside of LA County. And because of shorter seasons, you know, like, for example, for writers, there's the opportunities are not as many because they don't have as many episodes that need to be written, and it's harder to get staff writing jobs. You know, one of my friends is started out as an actor, and she shifted over to writing. She'd gotten some writing gigs, but she hasn't been able to work in some time because the gigs just aren't there.
Yeah.
One of my friends is a successful director. He's directed a number of studio projects. More recently, he's only been able to do independent films that don't pay nearly as much. And, it's been a real challenge for him to get new gigs. It's tough. And then, another friend of mine is an actor. She's a character actor, and she's, you've seen her face in a lot of things. And she just got sticker shock because, she's a member of SAG-AFTRA, and like the other trade unions in the industry, if you qualify, if you make enough money working in the in your craft, their health insurance is outstanding. But to qualify for them, you have to make X amount of dollars per year. And she found out the hard way that although she made a fair amount of money last year, most of it was from residuals from some TV commercials that she made, and those don't count as qualifying income to meet the insurance requisite.
Naturally, it's always something like that. A little bit the fine print or whatever. We'll have to come back and revisit some more things with you. We are coming to the end of the show, and I really want to thank you for you taking time out of your schedule to talk to us about what you're doing out in Hollywood Master Storytellers. And again, we're going to post on the podcast page all of the links that we talked about, especially the Pee Wee Herman information, that's the Criterion Collection, etc., like that.
And by the way, for those who splurge on the Criterion release, if you get the 4K version, there are 2 discs on it. I got to give a plug for my friends at Criterion. You've got the 4K disc and then the Blu-ray. The bonus content, including my interview, is only on the Blu-ray disc.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good to know.
And as of a couple of months ago, if you ordered it directly from Criterion.com, you got a discount. But otherwise, you can order it through Criterion. You can order it through Amazon. You may be able to get it through your local video store if they're still stocking DVDs and Blu-rays. And, of course, Criterion has a lot of great content. And they even have their own streaming channel, the Criterion Collection.
That would be something to look at, folks.
Which has some great content. Now, Pee-wee's Big Adventure is not going to be on the Criterion channel. They did not have that license from Warner Brothers, but they have a lot of really great classic and foreign films.
Gordon Meyer, thanks for coming on the show today. We appreciate it. You take care out there in California.
Been my pleasure.
All the best in Tinseltown. Okay.
Take care, Gordon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Great to hear from him.
Yes. Well, very knowledgeable about the industry and his contacts and what he's learned out there. And he's kind of a wealth of information.
He really is. He's plugged in out there, which is, I would think nowadays is hard to do. Yeah.
Yes. Here's a mental floss from Alexander Hamilton, Mark.
Ooh, okay. Let's hear this.
Embrace adversity.
Okay.
There's actually 11 of them, but I gave you one of them.
I like that, though.
Embrace adversity.
I like that.
I can give you another one. He said, marry rich.
I tried that, but it didn't work.
Oh, and we'll just do one funny.
All right.
This gentleman was seen shopping with his wife. He says, I don't need Chat GPT. My wife knows everything.
See there. That's all you need to know.
Well, that's all for this hour. Thank you for listening, folks. If you've enjoyed this episode, you can listen to additional shows at stlandtune.com. Consider leaving a review on our website, Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, or your preferred podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners and continue to grow. I want to thank Bob Berthasell for our theme music, our sponsor, Better Rate Mortgage, our guests, Gordon Meyer, and co-host Mark Langston. And we thank you for being a part of our community of curious minds. St. Louis in Tune is a production of Motif Media Group and the U.S. Radio Network. Remember to keep seeking, keep learning, walk worthy, and let your light shine. For St. Louis in Tune, I'm Arnold Stricker.